I think the Dodgers. Now, obviously, I said they're the NL favorite, but I think a Dodgers Giants NLCS is not out of the question here. We obviously two divisional teams facing off in the LCS, and either league is not even close to unheard of. But when you look at the NL, the Nationals, I'm not sure how. And obviously, they've got great pitching. My problem with them is their hitting. Now, in comparison to the Giants, it's probably even keel, but a postseason experience could be huge for the Giants. When you look at guys like Strudel Cabrera, Ian Desmond, Adam LaRoche, who else do they have? Bryce Harper, Jason Worth. Jason Worth definitely has postseason experience, but the other guys, not so much. And the Giants still have Pablo Sandoval, Crawford, Belt, Posey, a lot of guys who are doing, solid this year, but they were on that 2012 World Series team. And Hunter Pence definitely has some postseason experience. Their pitching does. So the Giants, I know I keep reiterating how important postseason experience is, but I truly believe it. Come October, when you get to those final four teams, I think they're all going to be teams that you look at and you say, oh yeah, I've seen this before. The Giants have a chance. The Dodgers, I think, are the NL favorites, but I think between the Dodgers and the Giants, it's not only a race for the division, but it might come back to be the NLCS matchup. What do you think about that? I know your favorite was the Nationals, but do you think it's a possibility?
I think it's a possibility, but if we're going by history, think about this. 2010, the Giants win the World Series. 2011, they missed the playoffs. 2012, they win the World Series. 2013, they missed the playoffs. So, if we're going by history, the Giants should win the World Series this year. If we're going by talent, they should miss the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think the Dodgers win this division. I think they win it easily. I think the Dodgers take 4 out of the 6 games they play the rest of the way. At least 4. I think the Dodgers are very talented, so I'd like to see if... I was kind of hoping this year would be the Padres' year, but they're 10 games away from elimination, 8 games under 500, so it looks like they're pretty much out of it. The Dodgers and San Francisco play in an easy division. Let's be honest, Arizona and Colorado are both really bad. So, they have a chance to... Both have a chance, to... San Francisco's got a tougher schedule, I think. They've got Detroit, they've got some other tough teams. So, I think the Dodgers will win this division based on their pitching and their defense. Their hitting's pretty good, too. So, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. I think it'll be real good race for the rest of the season. But talking about the Nationals, Rafael Soriano has given up 9 runs, all earned in his last 9 innings pitched, and has blown 3 of his last 5 save opportunities, resulting in the Nationals going to more closer by committee. We talked about the Nationals. Let's talk about the Nationals pitching. Do you think a closer by committee at this late in the season is a good idea for a pennant contending team?
Well, I normally would say no, but when you have a bullpen as deep as the Nationals, I think they can get away with it. When you have a division lead as big as the Nationals, I believe 6.5 now over the Braves, you can get away with it. And when you have hitting as good, Cabrera is coming on, Harper, they can get away with it. They'll be okay for the month of September. They'll be the 2014 NL East champions. Sure, it might be close, but they win the division. Now, come playoff time, that's got to be pretty set in stone, because preparing to be the closer in the postseason that's not something you can throw on a guy. First of all these guys in their bullpen, Tyler Clippard, Drew Storen, Ross Detweiler, I think those are the top 3 candidates to be the closer.
Yeah, Drew Storen is a former closer, so it'd
Right.
definitely be interesting to see what happens for him. So I think this team is really talented, and I think the Nationals are my favorites to win the World Series with the A's struggles. Preseason, I picked them to make it to the World Series and lose to the Detroit Tigers. So maybe they'll make it there and prove me wrong, but I think my preseason pick of them making it to the final, to the World Series, looks to be held strong. I think this team is gaining. It doesn't have a ton of postseason experience, as you like to iterate a lot, but I don't see that as super important. I mean, the games are all the same. I know there's a little bit more pressure, but honestly, the games are all the same. So I think this team has a chance to go very deep in the playoffs. I really do. I think they're very talented, and I think they really have a chance to go far. Who do you think wins the NL pennant?
Well, for the NL pennant, the Dodgers, I would say, beat the Giants. Now, in terms of, since we're talking about the Nationals, I don't want to rule them out. You know, the Nationals have a very impressive pitching rotation. Their bullpen, I think, what I was going to say earlier was that I think Drew Storen will get the role, and I think they should decide it by the last week and a half of September. Now, let's say Drew Storen, they give him the closer role. He's really good. He's been good all season, 1.37 ERA, and they've got a great supporting cast in Clippard, Detweiler. But I think the Nationals definitely give a Giants a run for their money for that spot to play the Dodgers. And I think if I had to make a pick right now, I would stick to the Giants. But, a lot can depend on what's coming up. The Giants, I know, like you said, they play the Dodgers 6 times. That'll be great for them. For the Nationals, they're not playing a ton of postseason teams. Their schedule remaining includes 8 against the Marlins, 7 against the Mets, and 3 against the Braves, a potential postseason team. I think that lack of strength of schedule for the Nationals might be another factor that hurts them.
Yeah, I think the Nationals' schedule or not are my favorites, but we've talked enough about races. Let's talk about a team that's not very good. The Diamondbacks have fired general manager Kevin Towers in the midst of a tumultuous season, but have reportedly offered him a job in the scouting part of the organization. However, he has connections in San Diego, so he may return there to take some sort of front office job. While some of his moves have been good, as extending Paul Goldschmidt, his drafts have been underwhelming, as have been some of his trades, such as the disastrous Justin Upton trade, or the really bad trade where he gave up Trevor Bauer for Didi Gregorius. So what's the Diamondbacks' direction going forward?
Well, yeah, the Diamondbacks have just gone downhill every season since winning the 2011 NL West. And, the Diamondbacks are not the most talented team when you look at them. And if you're going to ask me who they should hire as a GM, I'm going to be honest, I really don't have I really have no idea. They could go in a multitude of directions, but they really at this point, I think, have to go into a rebuilding mode. When you look at the guys, there's still a lot of young guys. I like Alfredo Marte. He's shown potential this year right now. I know he's hitting 191, but he's only 25. He's a potential future outfielder for them. They have Patrick Corbin, Paul Goldschmidt, both in the DL. When those guys return next year, they could move in the right direction. You got to keep Mark Trumbo. You got to keep, I think, Aaron Hill for a couple more years. I think next year, though, for the Diamondbacks, realistically, is rebuilding, and then the year after that, it's iffy, but they could contend for the postseason in 2016 as a surprise team. I mean, do you have any ideas who the Diamondbacks might hire as a GM?
Billy Epler, assistant GM of the Yankees, interviewed for the Padres job. Very talented mind. I can see him probably as one of the favorites. I'm not really know too much about the candidates, but I can see Epler up there. Talking a little bit about Towers, he had some pretty bad drafts. In 2011, he picked Trevor Bauer, who he traded for Didi Gregorius, which hasn't really turned out to be too great of a trade. He also picked Archie Bradley, who struggled with injuries and is not really as much of a top prospect anymore. 2012, he picked striker Trahan, who is absolutely busted so far. He's only not even 21 yet, but he's really, really struggling in the low minors with a below 200 batting average. Had to be moved from catcher to the outfield and still struggled. In 2010, they picked Barrett Lou, who didn't even sign. So it's been very tough for the Diamondbacks drafting internationally. Trades, the Justin Upton trade I can talk about, that was a disaster. They traded him because they felt that they didn't need him in the organization, and they got absolutely nothing for him. Zeke Spruill, Brandon Drury, Martin Prado, who's now in New York, and Randall Delgado, who's now pretty bad. So, Kevin Towers had a bad tenure, I'd say, as general manager of the Arizona Diamondbacks. But the Diamondbacks have a solid farm system. They had one of my favorite value picks in this year's draft in Tookie Toussaint out of Coral Springs Christian Academy in Florida. So, I think this team has a lot of potential in terms of where they can go from here, but I think for right now, I wouldn't expect to see them in the playoffs next year. It'll be tough.
Pardon the interruption, but I just found something. Dave Stewart, the former Athletics pitcher, has emerged as a candidate as a potential GM, and
that is interesting. That is very interesting.
He's been a pitching coach for the Padres, Brewers, and Blue Jays. Assistant GM for the Blue Jays, but he has never had a position as high up as the actual general manager. Do you think that actually could happen?
Maybe. Dave Stewart is an interesting name. I didn't even know he was assistant GM for the Toronto Blue Jays, but the Toronto Blue Jays have had some great success in terms of drafts in international with players like Daniel Norris and Franklin Barreto. So, I think really talented in terms of where they can go from here. They have a lot of talent, but yeah. So that's it's a pretty short show tonight. I'm tired, definitely. It's a little late for me, but gonna be ending up close to the off season soon, and this might turn into a bi-weekly show during the off season. I'm not really sure. We'll talk about it, Chris. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, the off season will be a good time to kind of lay off a little bit, but
and there'll be a lot. And then you'll be sure to listen to all the great shows about NHL, NFL, and NBA happening this winter on Infinity Sports Network during the baseball off season, and then hopefully my plan, I haven't really talked with Chris about this yet, but hopefully is to have MLB preview shows for each team starting in the spring.
Oh yeah, definitely. We should. We'll probably be the ones to run that, and me and Miles, listen for us. We'll be guesting on shows. I know we'll go over that at the end of the show, the blogs and the tags and stuff. But
yeah, anyway, on to our end segments. We're going to be talking winners and losers. So, Chris, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Winners and losers, my personal favorite segment. Got 3 winners, 3 losers as usual. Our first winner, Ryan from Fenway Park. If you watch the video, you will know what I'm talking about. Friday night's Red Sox Blue Jays game. A 12-year-old boy sitting first row on the third base side of the field. He got a foul ball. There was a foul ball hit in that direction. The ball girl gave it to him, and he turned around and gave it to a younger girl named Reese sitting behind him, purely out of generosity. And it got attention from the 2 Red Sox announcers, Don and Jerry. So, Ryan, that's a very classy act, and I hope that 12-year-old continues to keep the same attitude and mentality that he has. Miles, have you ever gotten a foul ball at a baseball game? I've never gotten a foul ball.
Well, I was at the All-Star game in Minneapolis in July, and it was a batting practice ball, and I got very close. But that's the closest I've ever gotten. several years ago, I went to the Red Sox Cardinals at